I've always wondered what it would feel like to be truly loved by my mom. Don't get me wrong, she took care of me. She made sure I had clothes, food, and did well in school. But when it came to love and affection, that was something she saved just for my little sister, Teresa. On the outside, our family looked perfect. Dad had a high-up job at a consulting company. Mom took care of our nice house in the suburbs. Teresa and I went to one of the best private schools around. But things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Abigail, your math test results are great, Mom would say without really looking at my report card. Then she'd quickly move on to Teresa's newest finger painting. Oh, sweetie, look at these colors. You're such a talented artist. I still remember how she'd spend hours with Teresa, helping her set up her art supplies or listening to her sing. Meanwhile, I was winning debate tournaments, getting straight A's, and taking home science fair medals. But all I ever got was a quick nod or a half smile. Dad was different. Scott Galloway loved both of us the same, but he was hardly ever home. He worked late and traveled a lot. When he was home, he tried his best to make up for lost time. "How's my little lawyer doing?" he'd say, messing up my hair while I did my homework. "And where's my future Broadway star?" he'd call out to Teresa. But those moments didn't last long. They were like random photos in an empty photo album. The only person who really noticed me was Grandpa Brandon, Dad's dad. He and Grandma Cheryl lived across town in a lovely old house that always smelled like pipe smoke and old books. When I was younger, before things changed, he used to visit often. "You're special, Abigail," he'd say with a smile in his eyes. "Smart as a whip. Don't ever let anyone dim your light." But then one day, everything changed. I was about 8 years old when I heard a fight that I'll never forget. Grandpa and Mom were in the kitchen, and their voices were louder than usual. "You can't keep this up forever, Madison," Grandpa said. His voice, normally kind, was sharp and firm. "Stay out of my personal life," Mom snapped back. "You have no right to interfere." I didn't understand what they were arguing about at the time. Not long after that, Grandma Cheryl died from a heart attack. After she passed away, Grandpa stopped coming to our house. One evening, I heard Mom talking on the phone with her friend Hannah. "Thank God that arrogant old man finally got the message," she said, sounding really angry. "I'm done with his interference." When I asked if I could visit Grandpa, Mom got very serious and angry right away. "If I ever find out you've been to see him, there will be serious consequences, Abigail. Do you understand?" I nodded, trying not to cry. I didn't understand why she would stop me from seeing the one person who really made me feel seen and loved. But I was young, and I was too scared to disobey her. At least for a while. The years went by slowly. When I turned 16, I finally found a way to see Grandpa again. I got a job as a waitress at a cozy little cafe called the Morning Brew. It was only a few blocks away from his house. It wasn't hard to trick my parents. Mom never really kept track of my schedule, and Dad was always too busy with work to notice anything. "I'll be home late today," I'd say at breakfast. "Evelyn called in sick, so I'm covering for her." Mom would just wave her hand and say, "Make sure your grades stay up. Don't let that job mess with your schoolwork." But instead of working those extra hours, I'd go to Grandpa's house. It was a big old Victorian home, the same one I remembered. The first time I knocked on the door, my heart was beating so fast I thought it might explode. "Abigail?" Grandpa opened the door, eyes wide in surprise. Then tears filled his eyes. "My God, look at you. You're all grown up." That afternoon turned into many more. We'd sit in his study, eating cookies he bought just for me. He'd tell me stories about his younger days, about Dad when he was a boy, and about all the places he had traveled. Sometimes he gave me little gifts, a special book, a pretty bracelet, or an old fountain pen. One day, he placed a silver locket in my hand. "This belonged to your grandmother," he said gently. "She would have wanted you to have it." We never talked about Mom or Teresa during those visits. It was like that part of the world didn't exist when I was with him. Whenever I mentioned Mom or Teresa, Grandpa's face would go dark, and he'd quickly change the subject. I learned not to bring them up anymore. When I turned 19 and got into State University, everything changed. Moving into the dorm gave me the freedom I had wanted for years. During my first week of college, I decided it was time to stop hiding. During a weekend visit home, I looked at Mom and said, "I've been seeing Grandpa, and I'm going to keep seeing him. I'm an adult now, and I can choose who I want in my life." Mom's face turned red with anger. "After everything I told you about staying away from him, how dare you go behind my back?" Before she could say more, Dad spoke up. He looked tired but serious. "Abigail's right. She's an adult now. And Brandon is my father. If she wants to have a relationship with him, that's her decision." Mom stormed out of the room, but I felt lighter than I had in years. Finally, I didn't have to keep Grandpa's secret. I could see him freely. Over the next year, our bond grew even stronger. I'd visit him between college classes, and we'd spend hours talking, sometimes about deep things, sometimes just about small stuff. He became more than just my grandfather. He became my best friend, and someone I could tell anything to. That's why it hurts so much when he died. It happened suddenly, a big heart attack while he was working in his garden. One moment he was full of life, and the next he was gone. I got the call during my morning class. My whole world seemed to stop. I remember running out of the room, barely able to breathe, barely able to think. All those years of secret visits, all the time we had finally gotten to spend together, and just like that, he was gone. The lawyer's office felt heavy and tense when we all gathered to hear Grandpa's will. Mr. Justin, a silver-haired man who had been Grandpa's lawyer for many years, sat behind a big wooden desk. He adjusted his glasses and looked down at the papers. Dad sat stiffly, his face full of sadness. Teresa looked nervous, picking at her nails. Mom kept glancing at me, her eyes full of suspicion. I stared at my hands, trying to stay calm. "Shall we begin?" Mr. Justin asked, then cleared his throat and started reading the will. I wasn't ready for what happened next. None of us were. I, Brandon Galloway, being of sound mind, leave all my property and money to my granddaughter, Abigail Galloway. The room went completely silent. I looked up and saw everyone staring at me. The inheritance included Grandpa's Victorian house, his savings, his investments, everything. It added up to almost $1.5 million. Dad looked surprised, but didn't say a word. Teresa's eyes were wide, but she stayed quiet too. It was Mom who lost it. "This is absolutely ridiculous," she shouted, jumping out of her chair. Her face was red with anger. How could he leave everything to her? What about Teresa? What about me? This isn't fair. "Catherine, please," Dad said, trying to calm her down. But she wasn't listening. She turned to me furious. "You need to share this with your sister. Teresa deserves half. It's only fair. You can't keep all of this for yourself." I sat there, completely overwhelmed. Of course I cared about Teresa. But this was Grandpa's choice. This was what he wanted. "Mom, I didn't." "Don't mom me," she snapped. "You tricked him, didn't you? With all those secret visits over the years, you turned him against us." "Mrs. Galloway," Mr. Justin interrupted calmly, "the will is legal and final. Your father-in-law was very clear about his wishes." The rest of the meeting went by in a blur, full of legal talk and paperwork. Mom kept fuming, while Dad and Teresa stayed quiet. I could tell they were hurt. The next morning, I went back to Mr. Justin's office alone. I needed to understand the will better and see if there was a way to handle things without tearing my family apart. "Miss Galloway," Mr. Justin said, looking at me over his glasses, "there's something else you should know." He opened a drawer and pulled out a small brass key. "Your grandfather left this for you. It opens the safe in his office. He was very clear. He said you'll find the answers to your questions there." I drove to Grandpa's house in a daze, the key in my pocket feeling heavier than it should. The old Victorian home was quiet and still. Sunlight came through the windows, and little bits of dust floated in the air. My footsteps echoed on the wooden floors as I walked through the empty house. I walked into Grandpa's office. The safe was hidden behind a painting of the ocean, one I had always liked during our talks. I never knew something was hidden behind it. My hand shook as I put the key into the lock. Inside the safe were two things: a letter with my name on it in Grandpa's handwriting, and a thick envelope. I sat down in his leather chair, holding the letter with shaking hands. "My dearest Abigail," it began. I took a deep breath and started reading. "If you're reading this," the letter said, "then I'm no longer here to tell you this in person. I've struggled with this for years. What I'm about to say is hard, but you deserve to know the truth about our family." Each word hit me hard, like being punched in the chest. Grandpa explained that years ago, he had hired a private investigator. He had suspicions he couldn't ignore, questions about who Teresa's real father was. What the investigator found was clear. Mom had been having an affair for many years with a man named Gary Pearson. And the biggest shock of all, Teresa was not Dad's daughter. She was Gary's. My hands were shaking so much I had to put the letter down. I opened the envelope. Inside were dozens of photos. In the pictures, Mom was much younger and in close, romantic moments with a tall man I didn't recognize. There were also DNA test results, one for me and one for Teresa. The results confirmed what Grandpa had said. I was Dad's biological daughter. Teresa was not. It felt like everything I'd ever known came crashing down. All the years of Mom being cold to me, the way she always favored Teresa, it all suddenly made sense in the worst way. Mom didn't really love Dad, and I was a reminder of the man she didn't love. Teresa, though, was the daughter of the man she did love, Gary. Memories came rushing back. Mom always pointing out my flaws. Always praising Teresa. Her whole face would light up when Teresa walked into the room, while I felt invisible. It wasn't just favoritism. It was something deeper. Teresa and I came from 3 different kinds of love, one forced and one chosen. As I picked up Grandpa's letter again, I started to understand the full story. The argument I'd overheard as a child finally made sense. "Your mother blackmailed me," Grandpa wrote. "She said that if I told Scott the truth about the affair and about Teresa's real father, it would destroy him. She begged me to stay quiet. She claimed she had ended things with Gary and wanted to save her marriage." My hand was still trembling as I read on. I read how Grandpa had chosen to stay quiet, not to protect my mom, but to protect his son, my dad, and us, his grandchildren. He knew the truth would destroy everything. But keeping the secret had caused even more pain. Grandma Cheryl, the letter said, had always been sensitive when it came to family issues. Her heart was weak, and when she found out about Mom's affair, the shock was too much. She died of a heart attack that very same night. "This is something I could never forgive your mother for," Grandpa wrote. Tears filled my eyes as I thought about Grandma. I remembered her warm smile, her soft hands, the way she used to brush my hair while humming old songs. Her death had always felt sudden, but now I knew the sad truth behind it. "My dearest Abigail," Grandpa's letter went on, "I'm leaving you everything I have, not just because I love you, but because you are truly my family. You're Scott's daughter, a true Galloway. I believe you will use this inheritance wisely and kindly." He also wrote, "You are free to share the money however you think is right. My only hope is that you use the truth to bring justice to our family in whatever way you believe is best." The letter ended with a final apology for leaving me with such a heavy truth. But I knew there was no going back now. After a long, sleepless night thinking about everything, I made a decision. That Sunday, I drove to my parents' house. The envelope with all the evidence was safe in my bag. Mom opened the door with her usual cold expression. But this time it didn't hurt like it used to. Now I understood why she'd never been able to truly love me. "We need to talk," I said firmly, walking into the living room, the same room where I had spent years trying to make her proud. "There's nothing to talk about," she snapped. "You need to share the inheritance with Teresa, or I'll take you to court. You can't keep it all." I took a deep breath. "I know everything, Mom. About Teresa's real father. About your affair with Gary Pearson. About how Grandma really died." Her face went pale, but she quickly tried to act normal again. "That's nonsense," she said. "What are you even talking about?" "Grandpa hired a private investigator," I continued, my voice steady, even though my heart was racing. "I have the photos, the DNA tests, everything," I said. "And I'm willing to share the inheritance with Teresa, but only if you tell Dad and Teresa the truth." Mom's face twisted with anger. How dare you try to blackmail me, she shouted. Do you really think I'd risk losing my marriage and my relationship with Teresa just because you're making threats? Go ahead, try to ruin me. I'll make sure everyone knows what a greedy, manipulative person you are. No one will believe you. They'll believe the DNA test, I said quietly. Get out of my house, she screamed. And don't think for 1 second I won't fight back. I'll ruin your name before you can ruin mine. That evening, I sat in my dorm room trying to calm down and understand everything that had happened. Then my phone started buzzing with notifications. When I opened Facebook, my heart sank. Mom had posted a long message about me, and it was already getting a lot of attention. I never thought I'd have to do this, her post began, but I need to warn everyone about the cruel and manipulative actions of my daughter. She wrote that I had turned Grandpa against the whole family, that I tricked him into leaving me everything, and that I was refusing to share anything with Teresa. She said I had become greedy and heartless. Her post painted me as some kind of master manipulator. She claimed I secretly visited Grandpa for years to poison his mind and take his money. Now, she said, I was trying to tear the family apart with lies and wild accusations. This is not the daughter we raised, she ended the post. My hands shook as I read through the comments. Aunt Christina, I always knew something wasn't right with that girl. Uncle Ronald, shameful behavior. Scott raised her better. My cousin Carolyn, money really shows who people are. Even Mom's friend Hannah added, she's always been difficult, Madison. Now everyone sees it. The post kept spreading. People I hadn't seen in years were suddenly judging me. Comment after comment, calling me selfish, greedy, and heartless. Childhood family friends were now acting like they knew everything about me, all agreeing that I had fooled Grandpa Brandon just to get his money. I closed my laptop and lay back on my bed, staring at the ceiling. Mom thought she could destroy me by shaming me in front of everyone. But all she did was make my next move clear. 4 days later, after a lot of careful planning, I picked up my phone and called home. Mom answered after the second ring. What do you want? She said coldly. I've been thinking, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Maybe you're right. Maybe we should talk about this as a family. I'd like to come home for dinner and try to make peace, just the 4 of us. There was a short pause. Sunday works, she said, her voice suddenly warmer. I'll make your favorite lasagna. Perfect, I replied, letting a small smile appear on my face. I'm looking forward to clearing everything up. After we hung up, I walked to my desk and opened Grandpa's envelope. Everything I needed was inside. Mom thought she had won by turning everyone against me on social media, but she had no idea what I was planning. Sunday's dinner would change everything. This time, I would be the one in control of the story. When Sunday evening came, the air was thick with tension. I was the only one who knew what was really coming. Mom had made the lasagna, and the familiar smell filled the dining room. It almost felt like things were normal, but I knew they weren't. We sat around the table. Dad at the head, Mom on his right, Teresa next to her, and me across from them. Before we eat, I said, setting down my fork, I'd like to say something. Mom smiled proudly and picked up her wine glass. Of course, dear. I've been thinking a lot, I began, watching her closely. About family, about fairness, and about what Grandpa really wanted. Mom's smile got even bigger. I've decided that Teresa and I should split the inheritance equally. Oh, Abigail, Mom said, beaming with pride. I'm so proud of you for doing the right thing. I knew you'd come around. Teresa gave me a small, grateful smile. Dad nodded, clearly relieved. This shows real maturity, Mom added, clearly enjoying the moment. I'm glad you were finally ashamed of how you acted before and decided to make things right. I let her words hang in the air for a moment. I smiled slightly. Her little speech made what I was about to do even more powerful. Actually, I said softly, there's something else I need to say. I reached into my bag and pulled out Grandpa's letter. There's a reason Grandpa left everything to me, I said. And it's time you all knew why. Mom's face turned pale. Abigail, don't. But I had already started reading. My dearest Abigail, what I'm about to share will be hard to hear, but you deserve to know the truth about our family. I read out loud about the private investigator, about Gary Pearson, and about the affair. Every now and then I looked up. Mom stared down at the tablecloth. Her face went from pale white to bright red. Dad's face showed shock, then confusion, then anger. Teresa held the edge of the table, her hands shaking. The DNA test confirmed everything, I said, keeping my voice steady. Teresa isn't Scott's daughter. She's the child of your mother's lover. This is ridiculous. Mom tried to interrupt, but her voice was shaking. I have proof, I said, pulling out the envelope. There were photos of her with Gary Pearson, hugging him, kissing him, walking hand in hand. Dozens of moments caught by the private investigator. There were also DNA test results. Dad snatched the envelope from me, his hands shaking. The photos spilled across the table. Everyone saw them. Mom in the arms of a dark-haired man. Then Dad picked up the DNA papers. The medical words made it clear. The truth was real. How could you? Dad's voice was full of quiet rage. All these years, all these lies. I can explain, Mom cried, her makeup running down her face. Scott, please. It's not what you think. I was young. I was confused. Confused? Dad shouted. He stood up so fast his chair fell over. You had an affair. You got pregnant. You let me raise another man's child, and you call that confused? Teresa pushed back her chair and ran upstairs. Mom tried to follow her, but Dad stepped in front of her. Don't you dare, he said in a low, angry voice. Don't you dare go after her. You've done enough. Mom stood there crying, begging him to forgive her. The months after that dinner were a blur, full of meetings with lawyers and major changes in our family. Dad filed for divorce, right away. His lawyer said he had every right to claim most of what they owned because of Mom's years of lies. A week later, I met Teresa at a quiet cafe. Her eyes were red and puffy. She hadn't stopped crying since that night. I don't even know who I am anymore, she whispered, staring at her full coffee cup. You're my sister, I said, reaching across the table and taking her hand. Maybe not by blood, but by heart. That will never change. We talked for hours. I showed her Grandpa's letter again and explained everything. How he found out, how it hurt Grandma, and why he chose to stay quiet all those years. I want you to have half of the inheritance, I told her. Grandpa left that decision to me. And you're still my sister, no matter what the DNA says. Teresa started crying again, but this time, she smiled too. I kept my promise and split the inheritance equally with Teresa. We used some of the money to help Dad start over. He had moved into a small apartment and had to rebuild his life from the ground up. Once the truth came out, the social media storm completely changed. The same relatives who had rushed to judge me suddenly went quiet, then started sending me messages to apologize. I'm so sorry for what I said, Aunt Christina wrote. I had no idea what your mother had done. We should have never judged without knowing the full story. Uncle Ronald messaged me too. You handled everything with strength and grace. Even Hannah, Mom's best friend, reached out. I supported Catherine for years, not knowing the pain she caused. I hope you can forgive me for being so harsh. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I wonder if I did the right thing. Was it worth it? Was exposing the truth really worth all the pain? The damage to Teresa, the end of my parents' marriage, the public mess? But then I remember the years I spent feeling ignored. I remember how Mom lied and twisted things to control everyone. I think about how deeply she hurt Dad by hiding the truth for so long. I remember Grandma Cheryl, who died because the shock was too much for her. And I remember Grandpa, who carried this heavy secret alone, trying to protect us all until the very end. No, I didn't do this out of revenge. I did it for justice. For Dad, because he deserved to know the truth about his marriage. For Teresa, because she deserved to know who she really was. For Grandma, because her death deserved an explanation. And for Grandpa, because he trusted me to set things right. Mom still lives in town, but I haven't spoken to her since that night. Sometimes I see her posts online where she tells a new version of the story, one where she's the victim of a cruel and ungrateful family. But not many people believe her anymore. The truth has a way of standing strong, no matter how many lies are told. Dad, Teresa, and I have become closer than ever. We have dinner together every week, helping each other heal. Teresa is studying art therapy now. She wants to use her experience to help others going through family pain. Dad has started dating again. Slowly, he's learning to trust.